One of the issues we've talked pretty extensively about, Dave, is the tax situation and the fact that we're looking at all of these and saying to some level, we've got to either cut spending, which doesn't seem to be happening, or raise revenue, which seems like the logical answer now as we get to that point. We've got 2026 coming up where the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is supposed to expire. We're in an election year right now. Any thoughts as we look to that period of time, how this election may impact that, how the future will look as we look at those adjustments in a couple of years?
Yeah, a lot of people seem to think that if Donald Trump gets elected, he's going to extend the Tax Cut and Jobs Act for another 8 years through budget reconciliation. The Committee for Responsible Federal Government just came out with the most up-to-date study that says that if they do that, it will not pay for itself. They'll have to borrow money to be able to realize that tax cut, and it's something on the order of $5 trillion. So at least it's a bipartisan committee, the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget, bipartisan committee, and they tend to be pretty even-handed with these assessments. And they're saying that if they extend those tax cuts, we're basically going to be layering on top another $5 trillion of debt. So I don't see that as really helping to solve the problem. A lot of times people think that tax cuts will stimulate enough economic growth to be able to pay for themselves. And this committee says it pays for about 11% of its cuts. And I don't want this to get into big ideological discussion here, but the point is it will probably force debt even higher. And as interest rates stay at historically normal levels, the cost of servicing that debt will start to rise as well. And so I don't see another tax cut without a commensurate reduction in spending really helping our country out.
And if you look at it on the other side, from what I've heard, if Biden's elected, obviously the Democrats have no interest in continuing this. You would see the adjustment back to the 2017. Now, maybe some inflation adjustment to the brackets, things of that nature. But I know from a estate planning standpoint, really a big concern that these $13 million exclusions we currently have for spouse could easily drop back down to 5 or 6 million, which then becomes a big issue from a planning standpoint too, to hey, you've got to really look at this election, what's going on as you go into that 2026 to see how comfortable you are letting things ride versus trying to deal with the issues.
Yeah, I've had a long-standing feud may be too strong, but back and forth with sort of a guru out there named the White Coat Investor. And 10 years ago when the Power Zero came out, I talked about the threat of higher taxes down the road and the importance of doing things like Roth conversions and Roth IRAs and things like that. And he basically lambasted me on his blog post when he did the review of my book, and he said Roth conversions are, tax rates tend to ebb and flow over time. We're not any different at this point in history than we were, for example, in the wake of World War II when the debt to GDP was high. And not long ago, when Biden was running for president, he read Biden's tax proposal and said, man, this reads like an all-out war on the individual investor. If Biden gets elected, I just may do a Roth conversion on my entire IRA all in 1 year, which isn't anything we would recommend to any of our clients. But the point is, people are starting to come to their senses when it comes to the types of tax proposals that are coming from the likes of Joe Biden in the last run up to the election, and then this one as well. I mean, they're serious about raising revenue. And you know what? I don't think that they're too off base in terms of the need for raising revenue. I would like to see, like I said, that commensurate reduction in spending to offset it, which is, for example, what Reagan always called for. But I think that the individual investor needs to be realistic about the types of tax rates they're likely to see down the road. And there is a finite window of time within which to act. And every year that goes by where you fail to take advantage of today's historically low tax rates is potentially a year beyond 2026 or 2030 or what have you, where they could be seen and grappling with the highest tax rates they're likely to see in their lifetime.
And I think people need to understand, too, that some of these laws have already been proposed, meaning Build Back Better, like you mentioned, for the White Coast investor. When you saw Build Back Better and some of the impact of that, people all of a sudden going, wait a second, they're going to make these adjustments that are going to impact my taxes and all of these various levels. Now, that didn't pass, and so as a result, none of that went into play. But what you need to understand is that those laws are already coming forward. They're coming out. They're saying, hey, we've got to make these adjustments. And to some level, as you mentioned, that we've all got to give some to have a better future. And I think most people are, if they think deep down in, realize that, yeah, that's part of what America's got to do. But as we look at it, we realize also that the spending just seems to be endlessly out of control. And one of the things I know that we've had recently was the Inflation Reduction Act, which was really brought forward as a way to bring inflation down, brought forward as a way to, in theory, cut spending and get everything back on track. What are your thoughts on how that's worked out?
Well, again, had what the Inflation Reduction Act proposed done so in a cost-neutral way, I would have been all for it. But it wasn't a cost-neutral proposition. It added more to the debt, and not just in the year in which it was proposed, but over the next 10 years. I mean, we're now looking at a scenario where come 2034, we're going to have $54 trillion of debt. I mean, that's $2 trillion per year between now and 2034 that's going to be piled on top of our existing debt. So there doesn't seem to be any willpower at all on the part of those who are crafting legislation to rein in the spending. And it's all about, what can we do to put the fire out in the here and now? What can we do to react to a crisis in the here and now? And let's throw it on the national debt, throw it on the national credit card, and let our kids and our grandkids get stuck with the bill down the road. Now, we hear that a lot, that your kids and your grandkids are going to get stuck with the bill. I think that the baby boomers themselves will be stuck with the bill. I think we will rapidly approach a time where we need revenue in the here and now. It's no longer, the kids and the grandkids that will have to foot the bill. I think it's all of America that will be footing the bill, and they'll be footing the bill in the next 10 to 15 years.
Today, we've talked a lot about a lot of topics that can be pretty negative approach, saying, hey, higher taxes, problems with Social Security, problems with Medicare. But it's my belief that when there's a challenge, there's opportunity, that if people look at these with a realistic lens and start analyzing what's going on and prepare themselves, that there can be opportunity in any challenge. Talk a little bit about some of the things that we can do as people to at least solve the things for our family. Even if we can't solve it for the federal government, even if we can't change political and fiscal policy, what can we do ourselves to get ourselves in a better position to face a time that's going to be much more uncertain than maybe some of the decades we've had in the past?
I mean, the good news here is that we currently find ourselves at near historic low tax rates, which means that there is a window of opportunity within to take advantage of historically low tax rates. So how do you take advantage of a low tax rate to benefit you, to benefit your retirement before tax rates go up for good? Well, we know that those people who have large amounts of money in tax-deferred accounts like 401ks and IRAs received a deduction on those dollars, but they haven't paid the taxes yet. And so one opportunity the federal government gives you is they say, okay, by way of what's called a Roth conversion, you can get those assets repositioned to tax-free. You will pay a tax, but you'll pay those taxes at historically low tax rates on your terms to avoid having to pay taxes at historically high tax rates somewhere down the road on the IRS's terms. And so I've been sounding the bell on this for the last 15 years. Look, we're at historically low tax rates. They're going to go up in 2026. I still think that's going to be a good deal. I'm worried about what's going to happen in 2030 and beyond. Let's take advantage of historically low tax rates while they're still around. Get those dollars systematically repositioned to tax-free. Shift the money slowly enough that you don't rise into a tax bracket that gives you heartburn, but quickly enough that you get all the heavy lifting before tax rates go up for good.
And the way you do that is to get with someone like ourselves that allows this to happen, that's focused on this. I see and Dave sees definitely as he looks across country, I see as I meet with individuals, being a CPA, working with thousands of CPAs across country, a lot of advisors are not focused on the fact that these things are coming about. They're not looking that far into the future. And one of the big things that we do is extensive tax planning. If you look, their surveys have been done saying that tax planning is the number one requested service that people have because they realize what a big impact this can have. And I know when you look at doubling taxes, that could easily ruin retirements that otherwise would have worked out very well, that all of a sudden that big bill is going to ruin those retirements. We offer that complex tax plan. We're going to go into the details to see what impact all of this is going to have. We're going to look at IRMA adjustments for Medicare. We're going to look at adjustments for your capital gains accounts, those net investment income tax. We're going to look at Social Security taxation. I mean, all that's going to be part of the complex planning that we offer to make sure you get to a point to work through that process. Dave, any parting comments that you have as we try to wrap everything up?
I guess the only thing is I don't like to wax too apocalyptic. I do know, but I like to strike a serious tone because I know Peter Schiff. I actually did a video on something he said. He said, "Look, politicians are in the business of getting reelected. That is their number one job. You may think that their number one job is to represent you. Their number one job is to get reelected, and it's not." Solving tough problems that alienate a portion of their voters is not the types of things that they like to do because it doesn't contribute to their reelection. So I would not count on politicians taking preemptive, proactive measures to protect you, the taxpayer. They're not going to do it. They're not going to shore up these programs when there's still a little bit of time left to kick the can down the road. So I would, like I said, take advantage of, every year that goes by where you fail to take advantage of low tax rates is potentially a year beyond, say, 2030, when you could be paying the highest tax rates you're likely to see in your lifetime. So take advantage of Dave and Dave's services. He's one of the very best in the nation. I know that from just personal experience of dealing with Dave. Dave, you've been my CPA for many, many years, and so I can't recommend you enough. And so just take advantage of this this opportunity to work with Dave and take advantage of this window of opportunity before it slams shut.
I appreciate that, Dave, so much, and thank you for being on the show with us.
My pleasure.